Hi guys, Jimmy McIntyre here and welcome to another episode of Photo Talk. This week we're going to look at how we can use lines to guide our viewers' eyes towards a strong light source. And that in turn will deepen the mood in our image. Last time we looked at how we could use darkness to the same effect. Essentially we use darker parts of our image to guide our viewers' eyes towards a strong light source, and that deepened the mood in our scene. As photographers, most of you will know how important converging and leading lines are in our images. But what if we combine that with a strong light source? Well, lines in general are really easy for our mind to process, especially when we look at a scene and it looks all chaotic. If there's a pattern of lines there, it just makes it easier for our mind to process. But if we combine that with a strong light source, we combine that simplistic pattern to something that leads to a strong emotional response, like a sunset or a sunrise. If we look at this image, for example, this is a potentially chaotic scene, but for some reason it's appealing. We can make sense to it, and that's because we have some leading lines that add structure to the scene. But let's combine the use of lines with a strong light source, like this particular scene. We have a very nice sunrise, but at the end of the jetty we have a strong light source and the light is reflected on the floor in the jetty. And while many elements give this image a certain amount of appeal, the leading lines just make it easier for our minds to process. And with this scene too, we have a very strong light source at the window, and the bookshelves are leading our eyes towards that strong light source. Again, adding a lot more depth to our scene than if we didn't have a strong light source there. Now, our lines don't always have to be straight. For example, in this image from Motakaiki Beach in New Zealand, we have this guiding path which takes us all the way through to that sunset, through the rocks. And exactly the same with this shot from China. It doesn't look like we have any leading lines, but in fact, all of the fog guides us round. It's almost like a path going towards the sun. Not to mention the lines in the clouds created by the sun and the shadows, which again lead us towards that strong light source. In this example, it doesn't look like there are any real leading lines because we have a lot of details in the rocks. We have some straight lines in the temple at the bottom, but if we just look at the overlay, we can see that they're all going in the same general direction. They're all pushing towards that light source in the sky, and even the bird is pushing us towards that light source too. Now, rather than using other elements in the scene as our lines, we can also use the light itself as our guiding lines. And for example, here from Antelope Canyon, these three lines guide our eye. They make things much simpler to process among all these details and textures. So here we're using the light source itself as the lines that give our image structure. This time with cityscapes, we can use the light trails from cars, which act as leading lines, and they help to simplify our image, giving it structure, making it easier for our mind to process. But we're not limited to single lines. We can actually combine lines as well. For example, here in Kyoto, the trees are leading us to that strong light source in the sky, but we also have these converging lines at the bottom part of the image taking us to those people who are dressed in traditional Japanese gear, which is perfect for the scene that we're looking at. Here we have lines taking us to the strong light source on the horizon, but we're combining that with vertical lines that are taking us to the Milky Way as well. And in our final example in this jetty, we can see very obvious lines in the jetty taking us to the sunrise, but in the sky we also have some subtle lines. The shape of the cloud is dragging us towards that sunrise, just like the jetty's doing. And those are some examples of how we can combine leading lines and converging lines with a strong light source to give our image more depth and more mood, and also to make the image easier to process. So if you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel below and check out my other YouTube tutorials. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.